and welcome to another video. So I have this stack of books that I really want to read and I'm really excited about it, but I haven't been able to start any of them for like one reason or another. Like I'm in the middle of a long book or life is just getting in the way and I haven't been able to start it. And just looking at this pile of books and knowing how much I want to read them is slowly just chipping away at my soul. So we're going to be doing a 24-hour readathon. Two things about that before we start. I am no way delusional enough to think that I could read all of these books in 24 hours, and I'm also no way delusional enough to think that I could read for 24 hours straight. So we're going to be doing that new thing that I've been seeing everybody doing, where they have like a timer and they read for the 24 hours off of the timer and like take breaks and stuff in between. Honestly, I don't even think I have 24 hours straight where I can just read, because of all this other stuff I have to do. So I'm really excited to do this and to see how many books I can actually read in 24 hours. So today is Friday and I'm actually not going to be starting this for another couple of hours, probably sometime tonight. And then all of Sunday I probably won't have any time to read. So this is going to take me probably like 3 or 4 days. We'll finish it up on Monday. Anyways, enough of that. So let me just give you like a quick little view of the books that I am excited to read. First, I'm in the middle of Evermore. I'm like probably a third of the way through it. I'm like really flying through this, so I want to finish this one first. Like this is top priority number 1. So I am a third of the way into the book, but I still don't really know enough of it to give you an explanation. Basically, it's a YA paranormal romance. Question mark on the romance because I don't love the love interest. Moving on, I'm also in the middle of Twilight. I'm reading this for the Twilight Readathon that's taking place from now until December, and August is book 1. I haven't made it very far, but I have this in the audiobook, so if I have to do stuff in between, then I'll listen to that. For this stack, I'm not going to give a description for every single book because that's going to take way too long. Instead, I'm going to tell you what they are, and then if I actually get around to reading them in this readathon, then I'll give you a description. First, we got The Fear by Natasha Preston, YA horror. Then we have Shiver by Maggie, I don't know how to pronounce that, YA shifter romance. Silence by Natasha Preston, new adult romance. The Guilty Couple by C.L. Taylor. This is a domestic thriller, and I won this from Goodreads. Shatter Me by Tahira Mafi. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I don't know anything about this except that the main character seems to be like Rogue from X-Men, and if you think that Rogue from X-Men is not the coolest X-Men, then you're lying. Beatrice by Emily Henry. I got this for Christmas and I've been waiting for summer vibes to read it, but I've never felt the summer vibes, so maybe today? And the last one is Coven by Jennifer Duggan and Kit Seaton. This is a YA witchy graphic novel. So yeah, really excited for these books. I'll let you know when I start reading. Good morning, it is Saturday and it's actually a week later. I wasn't able to do any reading like at all last weekend, so we just pushed it back a week. I did get about an hour of reading done into Evermore last night. I started on page 174 and ended up on page 216, so about 40 pages in an hour, which I think is pretty good because I would consider myself a slow reader. Sorry for the noise, it's Saturday morning and everybody is working on their lawn right now. Anyways, 1 hour done. That's not very far into this. I still have 23 more hours to go, but I have to run a couple of errands because Saturday morning. And so I'm going to be switching over to my Twilight audiobook because I also want to try to finish reading that by the end of August, and I'm running out of days. For this one, I'm on page 160, so we'll see how much I can get done in the next couple of hours. Okay, so I just got home. It's only been an hour, but I've read this much of Twilight. Well, I listened to it. So I'm on page 218 now, and I was on 160 before, so that's another 50 pages in an hour. So honestly, I'm on a roll. Like, this is doing great. But yeah, I'm on the part now where she kind of like tells Edward that she knows that there's something up with him, that he's not human, but she hasn't had, like, we're not at that iconic forced scene where she's like, are you a vampire? But like, she's asking him about how he could read minds, and basically she knows he's a vampire. There's just not that iconic scene. And I don't remember if that scene was only in the movies or in the books, because in the book it's a little bit lackluster, if I'm gonna be honest. But yeah, and then they start talking about it, and she's like asking him about like the bears that they eat when they went to go hunting, and like it's just so casual about it. He's talking about like Emmett's favorite type of bear to eat and how like they're funner to eat at certain times, and it's just so funny. And then there's like that other moment where Jessica is asking Bella about like what happened at Port Angeles. Edward is like listening in the whole time, and Bella knows that Edward is listening in, and it's just so funny, some of the things that she says. So far this is like my favorite parts of the book. It's just so funny. Anyways, while I was out, I got some Dunkin'. They have pumpkin cold brew out, and I'm so happy for it. I don't know if you could tell, but I have like a little pumpkin necklace. I'm so ready for spooky season, and I'm ready for fall, and I'm over summer. I'm just over it. Anyways, I went to a free little library, and I went to a consignment shop because they were having a sale and it's tax-free week. So I thought I would just show you real quick what I got. So I got this book. It's called Refugee by Alan Gratz, and it follows 3 different people. It follows Joseph, a Jewish boy living in 1930s Nazi Germany, Isabel, a Cuban girl in 1994, and Mahmoud, I don't know how to pronounce that, a Syrian boy in 2015. And these are the stories about them trying to find refugees and trying to escape from the terrible situations that they're in, and it sounded really interesting. I do feel really bad not leaving anything, but I've left things in the past and not taken things in the past, so it all balances out in the grand scheme of things. They did have some books at the consignment shop too, but not very many, mostly just like cookbooks and self-help books, and I just wasn't really interested. I didn't film in there either because I was, had my timer on and I had my audiobook going, and I didn't want to push the limits of my phone. So I got this long sleeve button down shirt. It's so soft and it's so comfortable. Long sleeve button down shirts are really hard for me to find that fit right because like my shoulders are kind of broad, but like I'm kind of like V-shaped, so to find clothes that fit, specifically these types of shirts, are very hard to find, and this felt so great on my shoulders, and I had to get it even though the print is a little bit loud and it's a little out of my comfort zone, but it's so soft. Then I got this long sleeve shirt. I thought the print was way cute. It is a crop top, but it's okay. I love it. And then I got this black and white striped dress. It goes about mid-thigh on me. If you ask my husband, I have like another dress exactly like this, and he's 100% right, but nobody has to tell him, and he doesn't watch my videos, so it's fine. Anyways, I am off to make some ramen, and I think the goal is to try and finish Evermore because I'm really close to finishing that, and I just want to move on to something else because honestly, Evermore is a terrible, terrible book, and I will tell you more about it when I finish it. Alright, so we're just about at 4 hours, and I just finished reading Evermore. 1.5 stars. This was really, truly horrible. This is a very rare rating for me. I don't usually give things 1 star. Even if I think that books are terrible, I usually give them 2 stars just because I like to reserve 1 stars for books I find to be particularly offensive. And this one was not only offensive, but it was potentially damaging. So this book is about this girl Ever whose family gets into a car accident and she's the only survivor. After this, she has like these psychic abilities where she could read minds and she sees people's aura. And she's just living her life in high school until one day this guy Damon ends up in the school and she can't see his aura or read his mind. Essentially, she's just like a random teenager until crazy paranormal stuff starts happening at like 180 pages in. Then we find out that Damon is an immortal, and this is very different from a vampire because Noel said so and for no other reason. I just finished this, so I'm like trying to collect all my thoughts and explain them in a way that's not so ranty. Okay, problem number 1. Damon and Ever's relationship is never believable, not even once. It starts off as like a playing hard to get, hate relationship thing where Ever is very disinterested in him and he's kind of a complete jerk to her and will like sometimes flirt with her and sometimes flirt with somebody else. It's just way over the top and it doesn't seem anywhere close to like enemies to lovers. It's just awful. And then all of a sudden, bam, insta love out of nowhere. But even then, he still plays games with her. He still like plays hot and cold. He still flirts with other girls and doesn't give him any personal information about himself. And then it starts getting toxic. And then he starts gaslighting her. He starts manipulating her. She like sometimes says that she doesn't like him and she's mad at him and stuff. And then when he's with her, she like just suddenly changes her mind and is like has all these warm feelings about him. And for the longest time, I thought that he was like controlling her mind or something and like trying to make her like him. without her ever actually wanting to, but that was not the case. It's just bad writing. So I would just, leave it at that it's bad writing, but it can be damaging because this is romanticized and this is kind of given as the ideal relationship. He's this gorgeous, sexy, perfect man, but he's actually terrible and he's littered with red flags and completely toxic. And this is not something that I would want even like one of my younger sisters to read, because I don't want them looking up to this kind of relationship, especially when she's very clear when she's saying like no, she doesn't want this and stuff like that. Getting to my second point, the whole ideal is around sex. So at some point they get to a situation where like it might happen and she ends up saying no, and then she wakes up the next day and he's just gone. And so she's now thinking that he left because she didn't want to go all the way with him, and he never really kind of like gets rid of that thought. He just like lets her believe that for a while until eventually he's like, that's really what you would think of me? Yeah, bro. You're toxic. And then there even gets to be a point that is so offensive. This is the exact reason why I'm rating this 1 star. So it's on page 184. I'm debating if I even want to tell you about it, because like if you don't know about it, I'd rather that you didn't know about it. Okay, so basically what's happening is Damon ends up erasing some of her memory or blocking it from her or whatever, because he's doing some sketchy nonsense and she caught him and she's like really upset now. And so instead of explaining it to her like what happened, he just erased her mind. And now later she's trying to understand what happened in like this whole day and a half that's just gone from her memory. I'm not gonna say anything. It's on page 184. Nothing crazy happens, but definitely some trigger warnings. And I'm just so mad at that part. Okay, moving on. We're gonna talk about the alcohol situation and then we're done with this because I could rant about this forever. So Ever ends up drinking one time, like while she's with her friends. It like blocks out all of the psychicness and she's just like a normal teenager again. And then she sees this as a valid coping mechanism and just gets wasted, completely hammered all the time while she's at school. And there's like literally no repercussions for this. Like she ends up getting suspended from school and grounded at home, but that's it. There's no discussion about this. There's no repercussions. There's no consequences. Later, when she decides not to do that anymore, she doesn't give any reasonings for why she doesn't do that anymore. She just is like, oh yeah, no, I'm off the sauce, in like a joking way. No, this is geared towards like 14-year-old kids. I would have read this when I was 14 if I like had access to it. It's over. It's done with. We're not reading that anymore. We will not be continuing the series. It's bad. It's awful. If you haven't read it, I do not suggest it unless you are like of age to understand that this is not the correct way to be seeing situations and relationships and stuff. Anyways, not exactly sure what to read next because that kind of put me off of like the paranormal YA romance kind of situation, but I really want to read Shatter Me. Like I really want to read this. All right, so there's 330 pages and there's like not a ton of text on the page, so I think I could get through this quickly, probably, I don't know, 5 hours with the way that I'm reading. Yeah, let's just go do that. Good morning, it's Sunday now. I'm just past 10 hours, I'm like 10 hours, 17 minutes, and I just finished Shatter Me. I loved it, 5 stars. Before I get into it though, I just want to give like a little bit of stats. So I'm not exactly halfway, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna make it all the way to 24 hours just because I'm already running out of time. Like it's already Sunday. So new goal is 20 hours, but we'll see what happens. Anyways, so far, you know, at my 10 hours, I have finished 2 books and read part of another one, so I feel like that's pretty good. And I've read 513 pages. I think that's really great, considering some of the 24-hour readathons I've done in the past have only been around like 600 pages. I'm just loving this way of doing 24-hour readathons so much more than like the traditional way of just doing it 24 hours straight. Like that's just not feasible for me. I get distracted too much, I gotta take breaks, and this takes the stress off so much. I'm only doing it this way from now on. So let's talk about Shatter Me. I loved it so much. 5 stars. Like this was such a great book to read after the disappointment that was Evermore. It was so good, and I went into this knowing very little about the book, and I feel like that's how you should go into this book because it just like hits you a lot harder not knowing where this is going. So I'm only going to tell you what I knew about it. All I knew about this book was that it was about this girl, and she has this kind of like power where if somebody touches her skin, she drains the power and life force from them, whether she wants to or not. That's it. That's all I knew about the book. I knew it was some kind of sci-fi. I knew possibly dystopian, maybe post-apocalyptic. I really didn't know anything else beyond that. This is such a page turner, and I didn't know what was going to happen next, and I really devoured this book. I'm so happy I got to read it in this 24-hour readathon, and I got to just read it all in like practically one sitting. It was 2 sittings, but still, like, I'm so happy I got to read it this way. One thing I am going to point out about this book is I love the writing style so much. It's so unique and it has such creative metaphors. So there's this one example specifically that stands out. So it's on page 122, which is the beginning of chapter 21, and I'll just read it to you real quick. Killing time isn't as difficult as it sounds. I can shoot 100 numbers through the chest and watch them bleed decimal points in the palm of my hand. I can rip the numbers off a clock and watch the hour hand tick, tick, tick its final talk just before I fall asleep. I can suffocate seconds just by holding my breath. I've been murdering minutes for hours and no one seems to notice. Like, just that kind of creative writing, really captivating, and it's really what kept me reading throughout the whole thing. It's just not like anything I've ever read before. That's not quite true. The writing style is very reminiscent to me with The Girl from the Well. Hold on. This book. I would say that the writing style is similar to this book, and I love this one. This is like just unique writing, and it's got a lot of like flow of consciousness type of writing where there's like stunted sentences and repetition and stuff because it's following the chaos of the main character's mind, and I love that so much. There's actually a note to the reader in the beginning of the book. You can pause it to read it if you want to. It basically just says like there's things crossed out in the book and like that's on purpose, and there's repetition and there's like run-on sentences and bad grammar in places intentionally because it, like I said, shows the chaos of the main character's mind, and I think that was done brilliantly. From here, we're switching gears. I think I'm going to move on to the audiobook of Twilight again because I have to do some chores around the house, and then after that, my next priority is Coven. This is a graphic novel, and I just really, really want to read this because I got this as an ARC, and I kind of just want to like read it and review it before it comes out. I think it comes out in the beginning of September. I don't know. See you then.
Losing time, I'm fading fast. I just wanna make it last. Try to let go of the past. I close my eyes, embrace the blast. Sleepless nights and headaches stack. Restlessness to hell and back. What's my purpose? What do I grab? A slippery surface, a heart attack. And sometimes you just gotta believe there's something that'll give you relief. There's something that'll have what you need. What you need. We're broken, it's tragic. We're not all elastic, but maybe there's magic. Believe you could have it. And I know of sadness, the anxious and panic, the infinite vastness of all that is blackness.
Alright, so I just hit 16 hours and I think I'm gonna call it here. Like, I'm just gonna end the video and the readathon here because it's actually Tuesday right now and this is taking way longer than I thought it was going to, just because I don't have all the time that I can just allocate to just reading. That's why I wanted to do the readathon this way with like the timer and everything. But even though I only got through 16 hours, I still got a lot of reading done, and everything that I wanted to get out of this readathon, I got. So I would say that's successful. I'm gonna do like a quick little review of the last couple of books that I ended up reading, and then I'll get into my stats. Last you saw, I was reading Coven, and I had just finished it. This is by Jennifer Duggan and Kit Seaton. This is a YA paranormal witchy graphic novel about this girl, Enzi, whose parents are part of a coven, and one of their coven members' whole family ends up getting killed. And so they have to move from where they were in California all the way back to New York where their coven lives. And MZ's very unhappy about it because she's been living in California since she was like 4 years old or something, and she's like 16 now. And she doesn't feel like she has any ties to this coven, so it's very hard for her to just uproot her life. And then the story just follows finding whatever happened to Ben's family and MZ kind of like coming into herself as a witch. I ended up giving this 4 stars, but the more I think about it, the more I kind of want to give it 3, but I think I'm going to settle on 4 because with graphic novels, I tend to just rate them higher because I get so much enjoyment out of them. I love looking at the pictures, and like this one specifically used vibrant, brilliant colors, and it just was a beautiful art style. I really loved it. I don't know, it's almost like graphic novels uses all parts of my brain and really reins in my ADHD, so it's easier to read. But anyways, so the reason why I kind of want to rate it lower is because the adults in this book were just terrible. And I know that's kind of a thing with YA books, but like the adults were just so, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say that they were terrible because like they weren't awful, you know, like they weren't bad people. They were just very absent and kind of self-centered. The adults just like really aren't in this book like at all. And when they are in the book, they're telling MZ that she has to be there for her family and how the coven is her family, and then also saying stuff like, oh, you have to earn the right to the knowledge of this coven, and everything's just a big huge secret. They don't tell her anything. She's not in the loop for anything. That on top of this being her family when she hasn't seen them in the past 12 years makes it very hard for her to care about the situations happening, and also makes it hard for the reader to care about the situations happening because we don't know either. And that just leads to like a bunch of questions that don't really get answered in this book, and it kind of makes me think maybe there's going to be more in the series, but I don't know because everything was wrapped up, sort of. The main storyline was wrapped up, but there's a lot of little things that weren't. Like, for example, when MZ is living in California, she has a girlfriend. Name I can't remember. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. They decide they're gonna stay together and they're gonna do long distance when she's in New York. Their relationship obviously is gonna get strained because it's long distance, and then like we kind of just drop it. Like towards the end of the book, the girlfriend is like not mentioned, and we don't know like, are they still together? Did they break up? What is there still tension? Like what's happening with this relationship? I feel like that's not really a spoiler because it's not a big part of this book at all. But yeah, I mean, I would recommend this book. I liked it. 4 stars. It's still good. So add that to the pile of finished books. The next 2 books I didn't finish, but I made a decent chunk in both of them. So I was reading Twilight and I made it to page 300. So I'm like this far into the book, which is significantly further than I was when I first started. I first started at page like 160 or something, which is pretty good for the amount of time I spent on it, which is like no time at all. So for this book, I just got to the scene where Edward and Bella go to like the clearing in the forest, and he shows her how he's all sparkly in the sun. It's iconic. It's everything that Twilight represents, basically. Like, you need that scene for Twilight to be Twilight. I love and I hate it. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'm doing a whole different Twilight reading vlog that's gonna come out, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, I don't know. So then I started reading Shiver by this author whose name I can't pronounce. I got to page 78, which is chapter 16. So this far away into the book. Not very far at all, but honestly, I only read this book for like an hour, hour and a half, something like that. Pretty good for the time that I spent on it. I was a little bit worried about this book because when I bought it, I knew absolutely nothing about it except that it was like a wolf shifter YA romance. That's it. That's really all I needed to know. And then when I was going to put this into Goodreads and like, you know, have the currently reading thing, I saw so many bad reviews for this, and all the people that I'm friends with on Goodreads that I've read it have only given it like 1 star, except Wendy Darling, and we all know who Wendy Darling is on Goodreads. I trust her opinion. Anyways, so all of my friends 1 star, but Wendy Darling had like I think 4 stars. So I was like a little bit worried, but not too worried. I don't know, I'm kind of enjoying this book. It's got a very aloof voice, if that makes sense, which is kind of interesting because the main character is very interested with the wolves that live in the forest by her house, and she's like borderline obsessed with it. So for her to have such like intense feelings about the wolves but also have this like aloof voice is interesting, but it's something that I really enjoy reading. So just starting this book, only getting like 70 pages in, it reminds me a lot of this book Ruthie Fear by Maxim Loxatov. I don't know how to pronounce that one either. But anyways, this is a book that I read I think like 2 years ago. I couldn't exactly tell you what it was about, but it had this like very indie feel, and it had the same voice and the same vibes that I'm getting from this book. So if you read this book and you liked it, you'll probably also like Ruthie Fear. And if you read this book and you didn't like it, you might also still like Ruthie Fear because that was just a great book. So just kind of looking at the differences in stacks between like my TBR pile that was like astronomically large and now my finished / currently reading pile is like, I don't know, I like it. I feel accomplished, like I did something good. Anyways, let's get into my stats. So I read for pretty much 16 hours on the dot, and in those 16 hours I read 956 pages, which is an average of about 60 pages per hour. And I actually looked online to see if that's like average reading speed. Everywhere I saw said that average reading speed is about 40 pages per hour, and so for 50 to 60, that's considered fast. However, I did read a graphic novel on this. Reading graphic novels is going to go a lot quicker than reading a regular novel because you're not having the same amount of words on the page. So my average reading speed is a little bit skewed. I would say that I'm an average reader and not a fast reader, which is better than I originally thought because I originally thought that I was a slow reader. So I guess that's all that I have for stats. There wasn't very many stats for this readathon. I mean, I did find it interesting that I read only paranormal books. Also, I ended up buying the second 2 books in Shatter Me from Pango Books. That's coming in the mail soon and I'm really excited about that. Oh, actually, I did want to talk about Coven because this is actually an ARC and I kind of think I forgot to mention that. But I got this ARC from this website, Bookish First, I believe it's called. And it's this website that's really cool and I found it from another creator, so I'll tag her video below where I found it. Basically, it's this website where you get first looks and you could read like the first 30 or so pages of it, write like a mini review, you get entered into a raffle where you can win the book and then actually have the whole physical copy of the ARC. And I don't know, get to read it for free, and I think it's just super awesome. So I'll also have that linked below if you want to have one of those like refer a friend extra points, because I believe we both would get extra points, which is super cool. Anyways, yeah, I think that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching the video, and thank you for sticking around because I know it's been a long time since I've filmed a video, but I have another idea for a video coming out soon, so I should have one by next week, and after that, I don't know. We'll see from there. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!